Welcome to episode 29 of Paranormal Unwrapped with Krista Risa and Jack Roth. Krista is a channel, teacher, and artist. Jack is an investigative journalist, author, and award-winning filmmaker. Today's guest is Sierra Neblina of Cherokee and Irish heritage, who is a Lyran Pleiadian Volunteer, founder of GalacticU Radio Network, an ordained minister, a Desert Storm veteran, retired custom home builder, and crystal healer. As a volunteer from the 12th Dimension Lyra, Sierra had no veil as she entered into a physical body. She came in with all psychic awareness intact. From a very young age, Sierra experienced heightened psychic abilities, including astral projection, astral travel, prophetic dreams, and the ability to see through the veil, communicating with angelics, elementals, deceased people, and animals. This got the attention of the military at an early age, and Sierra found herself in the Super Soldier Project at age 5. Sierra was saved from this program by a mother who was very transient, but was later tracked down by the military and by an implant that was coerced into joining the military at age 19. Later on, while in the reserves, Sierra had her first conscious ET experience. Later in her life, she would learn that her parents consented to a human hybrid ET experiment program. She plunged into a deep investigation of military cover-up of ET contact and human abductions. This caught the attention of the military, resulting in a chilling trip into NORAD, NORAD, and serious threats to harm her family if she continued her search. Later in life, Sierra would come to find out that her father is a high-level commander in the secret space program and was present during her trip into NORAD. The threats worked, and she spent the next 10 years off the grid. In 2007, Sierra was struck with a series of strokes caused by Desert Storm syndrome, effectively crippling 28% of her brain that resulted in left side paralysis and prolonged outer body experiences. While recovering, Sierra learned about her soul agreements. She met her galactic family, learned about her life as a Pleiadian ship commander / Lyran ambassador, and then began her galactic training. She also made an agreement to have a braided walk-in help her in her recovery and help her complete her mission here on Earth. Since fully recovering from her stroke, the galactic training has consisted of time-space travel and repair of timelines. The help and capture and containment of high-level cabal sitting on an Earth Galactic Council representing both galactics and humans during this time of the Great Shift. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
From the movie, it was so cool to see Sierra in the movie. She's just so badass. I mean,
Sierra, that is the word for Sierra, is definitely badass. That is very accurate. I've known Sierra for a while now, for quite a while. Little background, I first met Sierra when we were doing the Stan Romanek film. And we heard her story for the first time then, and it was so funny because we were at a Stan event where Stan was speaking, and then John and I had gone outside, and Sierra was out there, and we started talking, and we were riveted. And Sierra, you were telling us a story, and Stan came outside, and we just didn't want to go back in. We wanted to hear more of your story. Not that Stan's story isn't fascinating, because it is, but you know how Stan is. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" We're listening to a really cool story. He's like, "Oh, all right." Like, he was just like, he didn't know what to think. He was all, he was all kind of like, who are they talking to? Anyway, we met way back then, and we heard the story for the first time. And then, yes, we knew we wanted to interview you for the second film, Extraordinary the Seeding, which is available on Amazon Prime right now. And Sierra, I mean, your story is amazing, and it starts at an early age. So I guess the best way to go about this for viewers is just to tell us what your childhood was like. When did you start to kind of understand or think that maybe there was something a little different about you, where you were from? Tell us about that.
Well, you know, when I was born, it was very different for me. My mom said that I was like a quiet child. I didn't, cry and carry on. I came down from the 12th dimension, and I came in with no veil. And what that meant was looking around me into the different dimensions and the different quantum time and space, I could see elementals, angels, people that had passed that were still stuck in or choosing to linger in this in between phase. I could see people and so on. And it was very overwhelming for me. So I spent a lot of time, like the first 5 years, just observing, because I couldn't tell the difference. They were just as physical to me as you and I sitting here. And I was also really confused by people, because more times than not, they didn't say what they were thinking. And I could hear that and see that and sense it. I spent a great deal of my time kind of being overwhelmed by senses, by things happening around me, beings coming and going all day, at nighttime, daytime, wanting to come and speak with me, you know, come interact with this light or whatever that they see. And so I've always felt very not from here, very not from here, in the way that I see, interact with the world, express myself, which is blatant honesty. I rarely think something different than what I say. So it was really hard to kind of get used to all of that, really, honestly, coming in.
Right. And well, I would imagine it's been a constant struggle. I'm going to say struggle, because you've accomplished a lot in your lifetime. Well, let's start I want to go to the military thing. Did you just decide you wanted to join the military? Was that in your family? How did that all happen?
Later when I broke it down, later when I went back in and started doing some soul agreement review, when things like, you know, the interaction happened with myself and that Zeta that day, and I found out that I had soul agreements, and I'm like, what do you mean soul agreements? What if I don't want them now? So I went and started doing this sort of like this soul review, and what I came to was, then that thought just totally went away. That's the weirdest thing. It just whoof.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
The military. So soul agreement.
Okay, soul agreement for the military. So it wasn't a first thought for myself. I didn't think I'm going to grow up and what I'm going to do is be in the military. My brother's father was in the Army, and I thought it was cool to see him in his camo and stuff like that, but it wasn't something I necessarily like grew up rah, rah, rah. In fact, he was only in our life for a couple years before he was gone and we were moving on. And I came from an adopted family where they don't really hold very high regard for the military. And so I believe it was an implant, a chip, that if I were to get too far away from some of a particular group of people where I had made an agreement with a particular black op part of the government to track me, something I believe that was done to me when I was in the super soldier program, something implanted to have me come back so that they could track me, because I was always I don't like to use the word transient, because a lot of people refer to that as like homeless or something like that, but mobile. And I still like to be that way to today. My favorite way is traveling, is, you know, living out of an RV and living closer to the land and being mobile. And so I felt like there was like this implant, this thing that happened. My whole life was basketball. I was an Olympian athlete. My whole life, I ate, slept, dreamt basketball, and I was going to be an Olympian. And that was my dream. I traveled in high school to Sweden and Finland and worked with we were high schoolers. That's and we cool. were handpicked, like the best high schoolers across the nation, to go and work in the late 80s with the Olympians in other countries, because their basketball program had not been developed at all. And they were trying to put together an Olympian team, and they were suffering in Europe, all of the women. And so I think I was a junior in high school, and we went to Sweden and Finland, and our team played their Olympic team and tried to train them and help them. It was kind of cool.
My dad is on the Finnish national team in the late 70s.
Nice.
In Finland. Yeah.
Nice.
You might have met him.
That's cool. That's great. We were hanging out with the women mostly, but yeah, you never know. You might have been there as a coach or a referee or something. Anyway, so
it's a small world.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it was called Amateur Sports Development USA back in the day. And so it was really neat. And so it was like being a junior Olympian. Pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah.
So high school basketball, rah, rah, rah. I went to college for 1 year. I went down to Alamosa to a smaller college because I was such a player. And I didn't want to be sat down, that I was one of the only people they put in the game and left in the game the entire time. And if the coach wanted to punish me, he'd pull me from the game. I'm getting to a point here. The point is that I had in no way planned out in any way going into the military. It hadn't dawned on me. But I went to Adams State College, and I chose to go there to an NAIA Division I championship. Like, they hadn't lost the championship in a long time. So I still got to be with the championship team from a small town that I really like the vibe of. I really like being known by name when I go places, and to have that, connection with people. And so I was there for 1 season and got kicked off the team for being gay. So my whole life, my whole everything came crashing down when the coach called me in his office, and he was a new coach. He was replacing the coach that I went to play for, Doc Cotton, who was on the original Lakers team. Doc Cotton, the man. And I wanted to train with him, and I wanted to work with him. And he came in right at the beginning of the season and said, "My wife has brain cancer. My son is taking over." And he had been kicked out of Texas for being discriminatory against people. And I don't know how you get kicked out of Texas for being discriminatory, because they're pretty conservative there.
Yeah.
So I came home to a Southern Baptist family, of which I had a very hard time fitting in with, and didn't work very well for me. I only stayed because of my brother, and I wanted us to have some stability. So when they wanted to adopt us, I bit my lip, endured about 6 years of hell, and went on to learn a lot more after that. But I came home to being thrown out of the house for being gay, and I didn't even know if I was. So I was just hanging out with some women that were gay, and at the time had no idea. It's like everybody else in my life, including my adopted mom, knew I was a lesbian way before I did. Like, how is it that everybody else knows I'm a lesbian? I don't know I'm a lesbian, right? Like, I just didn't ask. I wasn't allowed to date in high school. I wasn't allowed to do anything secular. So it was sort of like this whole thing that just sort of like, I don't know, never occurred to me. So my point being, got kicked out for the basketball team, lost my basketball scholarship, did not have the money to go to college without the scholarship. They took the scholarship away also. Got kicked out of the team and was on the streets at 18. And so I joined the military. Wow. It was like I went to bed one night and I woke up with this, "You're not going to stop me. I'm joining the army." That kind of a thing. So to answer your question, I feel like it was an implant from my time in the Super Soldier program that had me come back round again at some point to go and join the military, because I believed that if I hadn't have, then my soul agreement about the Zeta hybridization and some of the other hybridization programs would have never come to fruition, because that's the initial open door, your connection through the military.
Okay. And then when you were in the military, what did you do?
I specialized in several different MOSs, training MOSs. I went initially to go in to be a military police, an MP. And I changed. I switched. I had this powerful feeling, like when I started training, that it's not something that I could do. It triggered something in me that was weird. And so I asked to be retrained into 16 Tango Patriot missile schooling, which is driving the largest land vehicle and with a trailer with 4 giant 25, 30-foot missiles on it. And I went in and I petitioned to become 16 Tango, and they kept denying me because it was combat position. And I get to the point where I think I don't know what I did, but I pretty much, when I set my mind to something, get it done. They accepted me into the program and I graduated with honors. The hell I went through, I can't even begin to tell you. I was basically told by the sergeant there's no way a woman was going to graduate from his program. He was going to do everything he could to keep it from happening. And he was African American. I'm like, what are you talking about? Don't you know discrimination? You're discriminating against me. And I just said, permission to speak frankly. And he said, okay. And I took off my BDU with my rank on, and I laid it across the thing, and I leaned across the table and I looked at him and I said, not only am I going to graduate your fucking program, I'm going to graduate with honors, you fucking son of a bitch. And I did. And he made my life hell the entire time, including bringing me in and putting me in the front leaning rest position for 24 hours to try to get me to admit I was gay.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
The discrimination was horrible. Anyway, so that was that. That was so 16 Tango. I also did training as Army combat engineer. So going in, we did demolitions and different things like that, and other things we don't talk about.
Were you putting things together yet in your head? I mean, were you aware of exactly who you were from
Not at all.
Okay. All
no,
right.
It was the weirdest thing. It kept occurring to me like there was something wrong with me, and I was extremely different, and it was very dangerous here. And that's how I addressed everything that I went into in this lifetime. I'm not from here. I don't know what this is about, but I'm going to go gingerly into this. And Jack, even when you and I first started talking, I had just had that near-death experience. I had that walk-in that came in, and you all were asking me why and to what end. And I kept, back then in 2009, I just didn't know yet. I hadn't really discovered, I hadn't really dug in. I hadn't met or been reconnected with the benevolent galactic family that I came here from. And it just kept, I just kept surviving life. That's all I did from the moment I came in to some pretty horrific abuse and so on and so forth, all the way to this transient life, to foster care, surviving foster care, getting adopted at 13 by a strict Southern Baptist family. Didn't let me do anything until the time I graduated. I swear I've just been surviving life up until about 2010, 2011, when they started showing up and started saying, we're preparing you for something. There's some things you said you were going to do. What do you mean? You came in specifically with all of this overwhelm and this ability in your physical body to be able to access quantum realms that the average person cannot. Therefore, we're tapping you on the shoulder as an ambassador that you said you were going to be for the people. You're basically a galactic person in a human avatar down here trying to do things for the planet. And we need you to start activating that, because we cannot interfere without a human being's okay.
Yeah.
And so I started doing they started teaching me how to jump in time, in time, slide through time. At first it was in one timeline, and then they trained me to go through different timelines. I started doing these great trips, these beautiful trips to Egypt. And I had met a woman there, Dr. Shelley Henry Bolton, who is this wonderful woman. And we were like two peas in a pod, and we were hanging out. And she was one of the people that witnessed when I first started training in how to do timeline sliding. I couldn't let emotion get in my way, because if I would get emotional or upset, I would actually pop out of this timeline and go someplace else. And it was very, very dire sometimes, to be quite honest with you, that I control myself and I be present, and I be present to the training, present to the rules, present to what I'm doing and what I'm saying, because I would just literally disappear from where I was and reappear someplace else, or disappear and reappear later in the same spot. And so Shelley witnessed me pop from the top of a liaison, les maisons in
Liaison.
France, les maisons, les chateaux maison, the house of the Templars, because I lead trips all over the world about spiritual connection and different things like that. And we were walking the steps of Mary Magdalene on this trip. So we were in the south of France in Les Chateaux Maison, and I walked upstairs, and she was waiting downstairs to hang out because we didn't have any time to hang out. She saw me go upstairs. The only way to go outside was walk down the stairs and out past her where she had been sitting for about 45 minutes, and I never showed up again. I told her I'd be right back. I went upstairs. Somebody said something to me. I got angry about it. And the next thing I knew, I was standing outside facing away from the chateau. It was dark. And I kind of came to, where the hell am I? And I turned around, and I looked back towards the maison, and I went, oh shit, I had no idea of what time it was or anything like that. And I went running back in to the maison, and Shelley saw me. She was getting ready to leave. And I went running by her and back upstairs. The next day, we're sitting at dinner, and she started teasing me about leaving her hanging. Like, when I got done with business or whatever, because I was running the trip. And I go, what are you talking about? And then she said it all over again. And I went, wait a minute, say that all over again, Shelley. And then everybody at the table was like, wait, what's going on here? How did she get past you? How did she come back in the front door? And it was like this whole thing, we're all tearing it apart. And then we were just left with, there was no way we could explain that Sierra went from the top floor out to the front, because there was just no way that it could happen 45 minutes later. And so... Wow. I had a friend, I was standing in the kitchen.
But that's good that you didn't end up, in Japan somewhere. You must be good at this.
Oh, good.
You did great.
It was scary a couple of times. I won't lie. It scared me a couple of times. So anyway, my whole point is that until I started having these interactions, and until I started learning about who I am and where I came. They didn't even tell me until 2016, really who I am. And when I say they, my guides, my galactic family, my support team, because I believe that every one of us that are volunteers that came down here have a team that come in physical and non-physical, and they're here to help us with our mission, what we said we were going to come here and do. And it's important to meet them and talk to them.
Your turn or my turn?
Your turn, Krista.
Okay, just most obvious psychic question. Did you shut off your abilities as a teenager, and did they come back later? Was it your choice to turn them on and off as far as the mediumship with the spirit world?
I told all of the spirits from the spirit world to leave me alone. Up until I pushed them back and pushed them back and pushed them back and said I would not work with them. So yes, I didn't turn it off. I just pushed them back or asked them to leave. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was a little bit of dimming down that particular energetic reception. I did choose to push them back. I was about competition. I was about bettering myself as an Olympian, as an athlete. And that part of the mediumship didn't come back around until 2002. Okay. And I consciously opened it back up again, and I did a stint of working with search and rescue in Colorado and register with the FBI as far as a medium goes. Oh,
see, there's so many aspects to your story, and this is always the thing that fascinates me about you. And first of all, there's definitely the whole super soldier thing. I always found fascinating, and I think that over the years since I've met you, you've come to more understanding of that than when I first met you. Yes. Because you have a physicality, right? There's a physicality to the way from the very beginning, you were an athlete. You were a world-class athlete. You were someone who I told someone this the other day. They were rolling, and it might have been from the other show. It was Tiffany when we were on that show. And I have a list of 5 people that I've known in my lifetime personally that I would never want to get into an MMA ring with. And 4 of them are guys I've known in my lifetime. Thank God they were all friends, because I was always a very friendly guy. I never got into human, so I was not a fighter. So, but they were the guys, and I was like, these are so those 4 guys, and you are the 5th person. So, and it's intuitive. It's intuitive though. It's like, I would not mess with you. But I say that in a positive way. I'm not saying that in a negative way.
Right.
There is something warrior-like about you. Now, this is where the point I'm getting to, because people are listening to this like, wow, there's a lot to her story. There is a lot to your story, but there is a progression as well. And we, obviously we mentioned early on that you're in the film. So why would you be in that film? Why would we want you in Extraordinary, the seeding about women who are having unexplained pregnancies? Well, that's another part of your story. Yeah. And there was a time period, if you can, I know you've told me this story a million times, but if you would tell it again, and just because it's such a fascinating story, but it is an important, I think that moment in your journey was very telling. And so could you just tell people about that?
Sure, you bet. I had gone off to Desert Storm, Desert Shield. It was only the 9-day period. Okay. It was the very first Iraqi war that we went into. And thank God I didn't have to occupy like everybody else did. So I was literally there for a total of 14 days. I was out of country 14 days and back. So that was in 1989. 90. It started in June of 1990 and ended, we came in, a kind of little excursion. So we're talking about a period. I want to do a chronological thing here really quick, and then I'll move right into it really quickly. So we're talking about, I came back because I was in reserves, activated, went to war, came back, and they wanted me to go to school. I came back from war like, there's no way I'm going to college now. No. And so I didn't go back to basketball. I didn't go back to my love. I went on to try and figure out what in the world just happened. What in the world just happened to me? What in the world just happened? And I think I was integrating on a lot of different levels. So 90, and at the end of 90, I rejoined and I went into the military full time. And so I came out of reserves and I went into the military full time. Was in the military for a couple of years and had an incident with my captain. I was raped in the military and I got out of the military because of that. And they let me go on a hardship because of that. Not too long after that, probably a year or two, I was in Colorado Springs with my girlfriend, and we were living in an apartment complex and we were looking for housing, and we stayed in the bottom floor. And this person I was with was a CB. She was a Marine CB, which is construction for the Marines. And she had just gotten out of being full-time. And we decided to move in together in this apartment complex in Colorado Springs, which is at the foot of NORAD.
Excuse me, what could you just clarify what NORAD is? Because Colorado Springs is one of the grid points that the extraterrestrials gave me.
Yes. So NORAD it used to be, if there was nuclear war, that's where the whole president and his cabinet would go to withstand a nuclear blast, was in the mountains there in Colorado Springs. And it's called NORAD, Northern Analytics, something. But basically it's supposed to be a big watching thing, like radar, sonar, LiDAR. And basically you can see and know everything. It's basically a command center. And that's why for a while it was.
That's why they would be there. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And in the mountain itself, because I've been in there, it just the front part of NORAD and the thing where it's supposed to be the LiDAR thing. And they when everybody started knowing that that's where the president would go, they switched that. So they would never come there anymore. But because of how it's set up, it's like this command central with all of this communication technology. It's a worldwide observation, military, co-military project where there's many different of our familiar or our friendlies that we're on the same side on, go in there and monitor everything. So you've got Canadians, you've got the French, you've got, England, Americans, a whole bunch of different types of people in there. On the front part of it, That's sort of like the facade of what NORAD is. In the back part of that mountain, however, there are not just humans in there. And they've been doing all kinds of things in NORAD for a very long time. And so NORAD, NORAD, I believe. Yeah. And
Yes.
its acronym is North America. NORAD. Anyway, radar, something.
And defense or something. I'll look it up, but yeah, something
radar
like
and
that.
defense. Yeah, something like that. So I was living in this apartment with this new girlfriend of mine. We were both working in a cabinet shop, working with wood, and going to sleep one night. We go to sleep. We're in a 2-bedroom apartment. It's on the ground floor, and you walk in the door, and to the right, there's a couch and a door right by the couch that goes into our bedroom, and a big window in the bedroom there. You go further in, it's the kitchen. Go through the kitchen to the back. There's another bedroom back there. We had a friend in from out of town visiting Gina. That was my girlfriend at the time. She was sleeping on the couch because we had a roommate, but he was out of town at the time. We were all hanging out during the day, getting ready to get up the next morning and go to work. It was probably a Sunday night or something like that. Anyway, and it's nighttime. We get ready to go to bed. We all go to bed at a decent hour because we all get up at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and go to work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm laying in the wall that I explained to you when you first walk into the apartment where the couch is. On the other side of that wall is the headboard of our bed. So the gal was like literally sleeping on the other side of the wall from us. And I slept more towards the window, which had Venetian blinds, and there was light constantly coming in there through the Venetian blinds, lighting up the opposite wall where the door to the bathroom was. So it's like plenty of light to see, at nighttime. I was awoken by a blood-curdling scream of a woman just screaming loud. Like, I just woke, like, what in the world? And I looked over at the clock, and it's 12:36 a.m. And then Gina gets up, she goes into the bathroom, and we have this constant fight about her not turning the light on before she shuts the door, because I'm a left side sleeper, constantly facing that door every single night. It's just that, the relationship stuff. She'd get up and do this. It's like one of those things, But, and then she'd also like announce that she was getting up to go to the bathroom too. It's like, first, let's wake you up to announce you go into the bathroom. You open the door, you turn the light on. Shut the door. You open the door, and there's the light again. Then you shut it off. You come back to bed. I was like, "What is your deal?" So the woman screams. I look at the clock on the nightstand. I go to lay back down on my left side. Gina gets up. She doesn't say a word. She walks towards the bathroom. Doesn't turn the light on. I'm like watching her. What's going on? She shuts the door. Doesn't turn the light on. I hear the seat cover of the toilet go up, and I hear her sit down. And I think, that's weird. And so I close my eyes and I fall asleep. And the next thing I know, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. And I open my eyes, and there's a Zeta standing against the wall by the bathroom door. Zeta meaning the gray guys, the big head, big black slanted eyes, hardly a mouth, no ears to speak of, tiny in stature, about 2.5 to 3 feet tall. And we say gray because, especially in low light, you can't really see their skin, and it occurs, or whatever they're wearing occurs as gray-green, kind of grayish green. And so I panicked because the first thing I became present to is the fact that I couldn't move. And I didn't like that. I was really dealing with some PTSD coming back from the war and stuff like that, and the what I had endured in the military and so on. And I kept passing out. It happened multiple times. I would wake up and it didn't get any better because the thing kept getting closer to me. And so my panic and passing out happened a lot. I woke up finally and could keep myself calm enough. I'd started working with these women in Manitou Springs, which was down the street from where the apartment complex was. of these spiritual group of women, these psychic women, Wiccan women, Christian women, but all of these women with all these different beliefs that would come together and talk about psychic ability. And I went to them, and I'm in my early 20s, and I'm just trying to figure out my own abilities. And so I had been working with them, and I feel as though them working with me to help me to get in touch with my abilities, and instead of just trying to shut them off all the time because it was overwhelming, to try and work inside of that. And so, first of all, I feel like that's what had me wake up in the middle of this, because I feel like it had happened before and I just didn't know. So I woke up finally, and I stayed calm enough to observe what was happening. And that gray was very close to the bed. Thankfully, I wasn't on that end of the bed, or he would have been inches away from me. He was on the other side of the bed, thank God. And so I opened my eyes this time, and I just looked at him, and finally I could hear way off. It's sort of like somebody whispering down a wind tunnel, but if you concentrate on it, it comes in clearer. So I concentrated on it, and I concentrated on it. And after a couple of times of waking up and passing out, I concentrated really hard, and I could hear, "Be still, be calm. We are only here to check on you." What do you mean check on me? And then that threw me into a whole other panic. Wait, has this happened before? And then I passed out again. It was multiple times. At some point, I was moved from that bedroom area, and I had the sense of being on something and going very fast down brightly lit hallways, brightly lit areas, and then kind of passing out again, and then coming to. It was sort of like I was in my everything I could do in my power to wake up. I was going to do it. I kept waking up during this experience. And then I woke up on ship, and then I knew I was on ship this time, because when I looked around, I was like, oh, I've been here before. Wait a minute, I've been here before. And then I panicked, and I went out again consciously. And when I could come to finally and observe, I actually came to consciously on ship, but kept my eyes closed. I wanted to feel what was happening. And it felt as though, you know, when you're sitting in the sun on a bright, sunny day, and then a cool breeze kind of flows over your body, and you can feel it really clearly, you know, and it rolls back again. I kept feeling this cool feeling of rolling this way, and then rolling that way, and then rolling this way. And I'm like, I'm being scanned. And I opened my eyes, and I saw these beings around me, and I panicked and passed out again. I woke up with a start. Just sat straight up in bed, relieved I could freaking move, you know, like for me, the most relieving situation that I was like, I can move. Okay, God, because it seemed like this went on forever. And at the same time that I sat up, I'm staring at the wall next to the bathroom door. Gina opens the door. She comes out cursing and barely moving. And I turn and I look back at the clock. It was 4 hours later. Right? Oh. She had been sitting on that toilet 4 hours.
Oh my God.
Poor thing. It took her a while.
She was frozen too? She was frozen?
They put her to sleep on the toilet away from me. Yeah. Yep. You know what is funny about that whole thing is that when I first got together with her, she talked all the time about the Zetas. She talked all the time about the military's blah, 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 and the Zetas and Roswell. And I just kind of looked at her and smiled and was like, okay, well, I see things, other things. Why can't aliens be real, right? Like, whatever, sure, right? She is all about it. And when she realized after we got through the initial shock because I was in shock, literally in shock. When we got through this, she was like, I cannot believe that the Zetas actually came into my apartment and they put me to sleep on the toilet. Put me to sleep on the toilet. And then all she wanted to do was meet them. The gal that was in there, in the apartment, also had her own experience. She tells us the next morning that she heard the scream, that she was very concerned about what was going on, and got so much so that she got up and was getting ready to knock on the door to check on us. She said, I was in mid-swing and woke up on the couch this morning. What is that all about? And then me and Gina looked at each other like, oh my God, that actually happened last night. That's real. What happened? So, yeah.
I have a kind of a strange question. Because you know, when you experienced the war, it's known that in the late 70s, that meditation was given to war veterans, and that this PTSD is very well known. Because you mentioned going into a panic, would you say that the feelings of panic were different when you woke up in the bed surrounded by the beings than, let's say, like a flashback, or did you kind of feel the same emotionally?
I felt the same emotionally through the whole thing because I was not in control, and it was happening in my experience against my will at that moment.
Yeah.
It was happening to me without my consent. It was happening to me without me understanding what was going on. It was happening to me by beings that weren't very nice. I've been visited by a lot of different beings in my life and had some pretty precarious looking creatures approach me and not been as afraid as I was in the middle of this.
Yeah.
Really.
Because your logic mind can't even. It's like, what does your rational brain hold on to?
Well, the thing about that I couldn't get past was I couldn't move. And as a warrior, as a very physical being, or I had been practicing being physical.
Yeah.
Which, Laura Eisenhower did my my chart, and I only had one other person do my chart, and he scared me so badly when he misread it that I was so angry at and against anything astrology wise for many, many years, until I started to see the patterns, and I started to get more into what it can offer us and so on. And Laura did a reading for me and pulled my chart. And basically all my houses but one are in the 12th house. And she says, I don't understand how you can be physical. She said, I honestly don't understand how you're physical.
You're all Pisces?
It's Libra, Virgo, and Scorpio.
And those are in the 12th house of Pisces?
Well, no, it's like where you come in at a certain time. Mm-hmm. I'm not very good with astrology, so please don't quote me in all this. But when they do your chart at the time of your birth, all of the houses, all the things that I had been born under were in the 12th house, save one.
Oh,
like
my God.
in the 12th house, like everything was right in the 12th. And Laura Eisenhower cried.
I thought one of the 12 houses. She cried.
I've never seen anything like this. How are you even physical? It was funny. I love her. She's my sister. I love her.
Wow. That's incredible. So what happens after? Now this story, this is as good as this story is, it gets a lot better, correct?
There's more?
This particular
there's a lot more.
Okay, so this particular story is the next morning I called Morgan Le Fay. I don't know what her real name is, and I really wish now I could find anybody in that group, but I haven't been able to track back because I've been so bad in my life about just being so present in the moment with the people and the circumstances. And I've lived so many different places that I'm just fully in that moment. I don't necessarily keep track of just everybody or everything I came across when I was a kid. And when you get older, you're kind of like, I kind of wish I did. But anyway, Morgan Le Fay come over the next day. I didn't go into work. I couldn't. I was in shock. I was in this real shock, like people, medical shock. And I said, Morgan, can you come over? I didn't go to work. I need to talk to you. Something crazy happened last night. She said, sure. Opened the door. She looked me up and down. She goes, why are you pregnant? And I said, Morgan, I'm seriously not in the mood. I had some horrible stuff happen last night. I need you to come in here and talk to me about it. She goes, calm down. Okay. And she walked in and she kind of did this weird thing around and looked. And she was like, yeah, we're going to need to talk about what happened in here last night. I'm reading some crazy energy. And so I sat down and I told her what happened. And she's nodding her head the whole time. Proceeds to tell me that this is a hybridization program. It's been going on with the military since the 40s. The reason why they could even get a hold of me and the reason why the Zetas came at me was because of a military agreement over technology for the use of genetics. And I lost my shit. I lost it. Who in the world gave you permission? Who said you could do this? I lost it. I started calling men in my unit because even though I got out on a hardship, you still stay in active reserve for a certain amount of time in the military. And I did active reserve for a certain point of time. And then I said, screw you, active reserve. I'm not coming in. Try and stop me. I didn't know how I've gotten away from doing the stuff I've done with the military, because other people wouldn't, like most people wouldn't just not have to show up to their drill and be okay.
Right,
So this is where I keep thinking that my father and the secret space program and a whole bunch of other things kind of weave in and out of this. But so Morgan said, I'm pregnant. We need to go. She said, I'm pregnant. And let's just deal with this one thing at a time. She said, let's go to the store and get pregnancy tests. Went to the store and got pregnancy tests. My life started to fall apart more, not get more put together. Then I said, how can this be? How can this be? I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I said, what are you talking about? Nobody but me has been in the military. And then I've had to track it back through my whole story. And I found it later on. But basically, she said, you need to call. I had just been reunited with my biological mother. I went and found my biological mother in 1994. Just been reunited with her 6 months before. She said, Morgan said, I can prove it. It goes in generations. Successful hybridization programs start with the grandmother. Call your mom and ask her if she's ever had any kind of experiences. Then call your grandmother and ask her if she's had any kind of experiences. I called my mom and I asked her and I beat around the bush. How do you say that? How do you ask that to somebody? And finally, I just said, I have something hard to ask you. Just please answer as simply as you can. And please don't think I'm crazy. But have you ever seen UFOs, seen them in your dream time, sleep time? Have what's your sense? And I couldn't even finish what I was saying. And she said, oh, man, have I seen them? She said, from the moment I was pregnant with you, the entire time I carried you, I had beings come to me. Most of it, she said, was really positive and benevolent. And she drew these people. She's very good at art. And she drew in this sketchbook. I saw at one point, and now it's packed away someplace, and I'll find it one day. But of these beings that would come in to her while she was pregnant with me. And then she said about 6 months of age of me being pregnant, it changed from benevolent to malevolent, to abductions, to being taken by the military and things being done to her, to me in utero. And her screaming and fighting against it, and her being really upset and really angry. And it really caused a lot of PTSD for her in her life. I couldn't imagine being taken again and again and again and again like that, and being like present to the fact that somebody's messing with your baby in utero. I mean, she was big and pregnant all the way through up until the time I was born. She was having these experiences. And so I was like, oh my God, really? I was like, is Grandma there? She's like, yeah, hang on. So put Grandma on the phone and said, Grandma, I got a really quick question for you. And I repeated it. And she stopped and she said, you know what? The only thing I can think of is this really weird thing I can't get out of my head. She grew up in upstate New York. And she was on a farm in upstate New York. And she said when she was 16 years old, her family wasn't there. She was on the farm alone. And she saw a spaceship land in her front yard. And that's the last thing she remembered. I said, what do you mean a spaceship? What did it look like? She goes, like a flying saucer, like they talk about. Is there any other distinguishing marks? She goes, no, really, it's really hard for me to get that. But I do remember that. And I was like, oh, my God. So I dove into what this is. And the only reference I had was Morgan telling me about the military. So that was the only other reference I had. So I started calling men in my unit. And I started asking them, have you heard of this Zeta hybridization program? Just didn't give a shit. I just didn't care. I wanted answers. And I called around and I talked to people and I called and I talked and I called and I talked for months trying to get answers, trying to get somebody to talk to me about this.
And just to clarify, you are pregnant.
I was
at this
pregnant.
Point.
I was pregnant this time. In fact, I wanted to clarify just a little bit more. I didn't actually start getting the military involved. I apologize. That kind of came because I was present to the upset and anger about this. What happened, though, in between me calling and getting frustrated was me realizing I was pregnant, being pregnant, going to the women's group and saying, what do we do? So we had this open communication. Morgan informed the group about this, and they were like, well, what do we do then? If that is the truth. And she goes, and I like, why don't I go to a doctor and let's get some proof? And then Morgan was insistent. If you do that, they'll come take the baby. And I'm like, well, damn, what do we do then? And they said, well, and then so some of the elders went and prayed on it and came back and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to form a psychic circle around you. We're going to have you live at our houses, and we will move you from one house to the next without telling you. Would you be willing to do that? And I said, yes, I would be willing to do that. And so I left Gina. Her and I were kind of getting into it a bit. For somebody
Well,
who believed,
she thought that you had cheated on her.
she thought I slept with a guy. Yeah, and got pregnant. Because even though she was a believer, in her mind, she couldn't make that leap. She hadn't, she couldn't, even though she knew about the Greys and stuff like that, and about Roswell, she didn't know about the hybridization part of it. She didn't know that. She didn't know the why. And so I just left. I dealt with my stuff later. We ended up breaking up because it got so bad. She was very upset with me, especially when I started to show,
Right.
just a
and you had never been with a man. Is that correct?
Not willingly. No, up to that point. There was that rape in the military, but this was like 2 years later. This is not like I got raped and it's his baby. No, that's not
right. No, that was years before.
Yeah. And so, anyway, but I had been dealing with irregular checkups and female reproductive issues since before I even went into the military. So I feel like that they had been using my uterus, and there was somebody else that had said that there was Tiffany, I believe, maybe, that there some women that are utilized more and they just overdo it. And I feel like I was one of those. And so I stayed in this psychic protection for 4 months. 4 months we went around, 4 months. And then I started showing. I was like 135. I couldn't get past 135 at this point in my life. If I tried, it was more like 125 at 6'3". It's just a skin and bones, kind of muscly, just tenuous, long. I've always been that way, but very strong. So I was doing great. Gina and I ended up in a really big fight. We broke up. I went to the group. I said, she kind of has a point. I'm having a real baby. I should maybe go see a real doctor, and maybe I should get a checkup. And I had been following all the things that these crone women who had children to do, vitamins, and you do this and you don't do that. I quit my construction job. I literally swinging a hammer doing framing. And I started driving the Roach Coach, which is the food truck that goes around to the construction sites. And so all of this was going on, and then what should we do? And they said, we will go find a doctor. We won't tell you when and where. We'll go find somebody who would let us come in after hours and won't share any of the results. About a week and a half later, I woke up. I remember I was on the couch and I was having these dreams and I was angry and fighting, and somebody was trying to get at me, trying to get the baby. And I woke up and I sat it straight up and screamed, no. And I knew immediately, and I reached down and my stomach was completely flat and the baby was gone. So everything was gone. No miscarriage, no, getting rid of the after birth stuff. There was none of that. It was just gone. That's when I got angry. That's when I started calling everybody in my unit. That's when I started demanding answers. That's when I was so upset about the whole situation. And one day I was driving the Roach Coach. I got this intuition to run by the apartment. Gina had bought a house and was getting ready to move into the house. And I think I was maybe a bit stopping by to grab some of my things. But I stopped and I parked in the parking lot space. I was coming up to the parking lot space that I parked in for the apartment, and sitting in the parking lot space was a black 4-door sedan with 2 men in black standing outside waiting for me.
Just great.
Standing there. So this is before I knew about the Men in Black, and this is before the movies Men in Black. So now we know to refer to them as the Men in Black. Mm-hmm. So I got out, and it's like immediately I knew they were there for me. I got out, I slammed the door, I walked around, and I said, it's about effing time. I got somebody's attention. Somebody's going to tell me why. And while I'm like shaking my finger and being all whatever, they just motioned for me. And I walk past, and they open up the back door behind the driver's side, and I get in the door, and they shut the door, and they get in. And I'm still talking about how somebody's going to explain to me by the time they back up and start to drive. I realized I'd just gotten in a car with 2 people I didn't know. And so I looked down and started to do my threat assessment.
What's that?
It's advanced military training to see what I can use as a weapon within reach.
Oh, that was your first response in the car.
Yep. So because blah blah blah, and I said, so where are we going? And they're not answering. Immediately, I start to do a threat assessment. And I look, and there's no door things to open the door. There's no door things to unlock the door. And here I am in a freaking situation. I can't move again. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you're paralyzed again in the car?
So what had happened was immediately my adrenaline went full board. Okay. My adrenaline went full board. And the next thing I was about to do is reach over and choke out the driver. That's what I was about to do because nobody was answering my question. And the next thing I know, I came to, sat back, looking forward, kind of blinking, and looked around, and I'm still in the car, and I'm about 20 minutes to 25 minutes away from where I was in Colorado Springs, and we were headed towards the mountain. And so I was like, it took me a while to come out of it. It felt like being sedated. It did. It was much different. Like in the experience with the Greys, it was like they had taken a portion of my brain offline that allows for motor movement. Okay, they just took it off. I had the awareness, I had some panic, but I didn't have the full adrenaline release in my body that I did when I was in the car. Normally when that happens, and I had been tested in the military, and they tested me at the strength of 3 to 5 men, depending on how upset I was, like physical strength. And I think that was something I developed from being in childhood and coming from abuse I did and stuff like that. So when my adrenaline goes, it's like maybe an over explosion of energy that most people or normal people don't normally get. So I feel like it was that somebody came in and was sedating me. I was still able to have the physical reaction, but there was an outside influence. It was a very much a different experience. Let me tell you what that influence was. So I sat there, I came to kind of like I was out of sedation, like when you wake up out of a heavy dream or into a dream when you're lucid dreaming, and it takes a while to get your senses back. It took a while to get my senses back, so I looked around for a little bit. And I thought to myself, these guys don't know I'm psychic, so I'm going to go find out on my own what's going on. They knew I was psychic, so they very well knew all of my abilities before they came to get me. I first was like, fine, I'll go into the brain of the driver. So I went into the brain of the driver. He had glasses on, and he did not have a hat. The passenger guy had glasses and a hat on. That guy I'll get to in a second. So I looked to the guy in front of me. I was staring at the back of his head. I just went, huh. And I just softened my eyes and my gaze, and I was practicing what the women were telling me to go into their consciousness. And I was listening to what he said, and I kept hearing, the sky is blue and the grass is green. What do you mean the sky is blue? Of course. And he kept saying it over and over and over and over again. And I come to find out later that is actual psychic training that's defense against the psychic. He had been trained to compartmentalize his brain and just lock off everything else except for that phrase and what he was doing, which was driving and saying the grass is green and the sky is blue. So then I was like, that's weird. So I looked over and I started to focus on the passenger, and I started to be like, wait a minute, he doesn't have an ear. Does he have an ear or doesn't he have an ear? I can't really tell. That hat is kind of covering things. So I was like, So I kind of went back like this way because I could see the guy look in the rearview mirror at me. So I kind of put my head back this way and I closed my eyes, and I tried to go into to the mind of the being sitting in the passenger side. And I call him a being because I don't think he was human. And there was a sharp, instantaneous pain in my brain, like a shock when I first tried to do it. And so I literally snapped back like that and opened my eyes and I looked at him. And then I started to hear this high pitch and I started to like lean over like, I'm like, and I think I literally said, okay. And then it eased. And I was like, oh my God. And then I looked up and I kind of started to observe then where we were going. And I saw this back way, this sideways back ways up to Cheyenne Mountain, because there's the public way to get into Cheyenne Mountain right up to it. That's NORAD. It's actually called Cheyenne Mountain. So I don't want to confuse people. It's the same thing. Cheyenne Mountain, NORAD. Cheyenne Mountain is the mountain that NORAD exists inside of. And so we went a back way through and to the back and northwest side of the mountain. And there was an entrance and that we drove into. And then we got out and we proceeded to walk into NORAD. Would you like me to proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, so the thing that I started to get was when I got out and I started to walk. The reason why I said that person was not a person. This being's ability to control my physical body was unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was like a empath on crack. Imagine somebody that not only could feel and sense what you were going through, but could project that or interfere with your own body's rhythms, circadian rhythms, your brain function, and your physicality. That's what this thing could do.
That's horrifying.
Well, what did it look like?
It looked like the picture of that guy that they caught that is a just like the guy, and I didn't see it till years later. He's on the private security of Obama's team. Have you seen the picture of that guy?
Oh yeah.
Just like that.
A human.
Humanoid.
But
absolutely.
no humanoid.
Very little, if not any ear, pressed down, maybe a little bit of an ear canal and a little bit of a shape. Big round head without hair, and something wrong with it. It's not right. It's not accurate. Like even what we're looking at isn't really the truth.
Oh.
And so that's what the closest description that I could, that guy that's on Obama's, that everybody started taking pictures of and caught the video of him turning his head or something like that really quick that one time.
Can't hold his form.
Yeah. And so we went into NORAD, and I'm going to make this quick. I could go into the details of everything I saw. I started to go into observe and record mode, which means every step I took, I recorded in my brain. Every flight of stairs, every level I felt that we were going in, I kept quiet and just like pressed into my memory. Like everything I was going to do, from the sights, the sounds, every sensory perception, what everything looked like. And I tracked it all through. So basically they first brought me in. Here's the other thing too. They never once said, these two gentlemen, these two beings never once said a word to me the entire time I was there. And so when I get out, how I know to move forward is I'm almost literally physically being pulled forward by whoever that one is that was on the passenger side. And then they flanked me on the other side. He would get on my right side, just behind my peripheral, or just kind of in front of my peripheral, one or the other. He'd be just behind the peripheral or in front. And they were leading me through. Like everybody that was in the mountains, and this is the kind of clearance these people have. You ever been into any kind of military installation? You go through about 100 different checkpoints. Every single time you leave one section, you go to another section. You have to show ID. You have to check in. The people and all the different, from the different nations and stuff like that we passed that were in uniform looked terrified of who I was with and never said a word to them. Not a word. We went about what we were doing in NORAD without interruption. That was crazy to me.
Incredible.
So we drive in, we park, we start going in, we start walking through, there's ups, downs, there's ins, outs. We walk into this one area where the only thing I can explain it to and liken to, because I'm a very visual person, is if you've ever seen Stargate SG-1 and they go into an office and they constantly talking about it, but through a blast glass, you can actually look down into the room of where the Stargate is. That's the closest to the setup that I can think of when I walked into this particular room. We walked in, there was not much. There was this black glass, and they walked up to the glass and then turned around, faced out. So I walked up sort of like, because this is the first thing they brought me to. So I was sort of like guessing at what I was doing constantly there. So I walked up to it and I looked over this guy and I looked over at this guy, literally like, so I'm looking and I look down and it's about 6 or 7 stories down and about 10 football fields out, full of aircraft, all different kinds of aircraft, look like retired aircraft because they're real close to each other, like they were in there for storage. Not like it's something they were pulling out and utilizing. It was just like storage. All different old, new, watercraft, aircraft, all different kinds of things. And it took me about 4 to 5 minutes of observing this space, going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing until finally I looked up at about 11 o'clock and about a football field out and down, there was a saucer sitting there. I was like, oh, you see that? And I wish I hadn't saying anything to him. I wish I'd have kept my mouth shut and stood there and observed a little bit more. The only thing I saw was so quick. I identified it. I turned, I said, do you see that? And they started to walk away and pull me away. What I saw in that split second when I looked down there was a United States marking for Air Force and a number on top of this UFO. UAF with a number, 115, I believe is what I'm looking at it now.
Element 115. Like,
seriously?
No, I'm
just so crazy.
It's getting trippy.
Yeah. So off we go. And I'm literally being pulled away out a different place, down a different place, around a different place to a completely different section. Things smell different too. Have you ever noticed that when you walk into some place, your home has a smell, a dentist's office has a smell, a hospital has a smell. Offices with cubicles have a particular kind of smell. Okay. So I went from this like military where I could like identify lots of military stuff, lots of military smells, to something that was more like office and sciencey, laboratory-like smelling and sensing, and everything changed in the way that it was designed and stuff like that. And walked up and walking up, and there was a gentleman standing there, very, very, like he'd had like 20 cups of coffee, this dude. I don't know. Just very jittery, just very, but everybody was terrified of these guys that I was with. And I didn't really, until saying the story so many times and really observing again and how terrified they were of these guys. He's jittery, jumpy, waiting for me, waiting on the outside. So we come down this hallway and there's a door, and there's like, go this way and you go right, you go left, there's a door. So he's waiting in front of the door. We walk up to him. I'm so excited that you're here. I can't wait to show you this stuff. Blah, 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 blah. I'm half listening to what he's saying because I'm guarded at this point at what was going on around me. Because I'm like, why the fuck did they show me UFO? What is we doing? What is this whole thing about? So he takes me inside the room, and it's a big room that exists on the outside of an interior room. And on the inside of this interior room, it's like it's made for observation, but it's a separate space. On the outside was all of these electronics, computers, all of these switchboards and control monitors. And then through on the other side of the glass looked like laboratory equipment, different kinds of laboratory equipment, like a mass spectrometer and beakers and all kinds of different things in this inner room. And then, so he walks up very nervously. He grabs a Pepsi can off of his desk. We walk in. He's really excited to show me this.
More caffeine.
Nobody, right? Nobody has really gotten to see this. He's surprised that he gets to show it to me, but he's going to show me. Lifts up this thing. It looks like a big Keurig, big machine sitting on top of a table. Okay. Or like a bench. And he lifts up this like plexiglass around the dark metal part you can see inside. He lifts it up. He puts his Pepsi can in there. He shuts it. He walks out, so I follow him. I'm standing there looking at him, and he is going on about some kind of science splain. I don't know what he's talking about. And like nerd talk. And he's doing a bunch of stuff on the things and the thises and the that's. And then he looks up, and I'm looking at him the entire time, and he points over to the other side of the room. of which I look over the other side of the room, and he's standing there very satisfied, very excited, waiting for my reaction. My reaction was, what? And he goes, you didn't see that? Like it was there. Now it's over there. I said, bullshit. So he pulls me in. He starts to walk in. He laughs. He said, that was my first reaction too. He laughs. He goes in. He opens up this other machine. Looks the same on the other side of the room. Pulls the Pepsi can out. Takes out of his little pocket protector thing, a little metal thing, and he scratches the bottom right part of the can. He goes back over to the first one. He lifts it up. He puts it in there. He shuts it. Comes back out. And he's now talking, but he's pointing. He said, don't take your eye off. And he's doing all these different things. Don't take your eye off. He says, now. And I look up, just like on Star Trek, without the lights. There's no lights. That thing starts to dematerialize. And I'm like, and then he goes like that really quick over. So I look over the other one, and it rematerializes. And I'm like, this time I scream, bullshit! Because, what do you say? It's 1994, and I'm watching something beam from one side of the room to the other. Okay? Or dematerialized, or whatever you want to call it. So I run in there, almost push him over. And I lifted the thing up, and I grabbed it out of there. And I've got a really good visual memory. And it's the way it rolled up the paint. It's exactly the way it was when he put it in the other machine. And I said, and I, with a can, looked at him and said, how did you do this? Right? Direct question.
You asked him that?
Yeah. Now, the two men in black had stayed on the outside part of the room. Like when I met him and went inside that room, they stayed outside. Okay.
Wow.
Which was relieving to me.
Wow.
But we were on the inside part of the inside room, and I started to grill him about, how did you do this? And he started to speak, and he started to say, well, there was this, and it's like somebody had choked him in the middle of his sentence. And then his eyes got, because I'm facing him and with my back to the door, and his eyes got really big. And I looked behind me, and there was that one, the one with the hat on, that I don't think is human. And then I was being pulled out of the room. The guy looked like he pissed himself, to be quite honest with you. And so off we go again. Never saw him again. Off we go again. I hope he's okay. I think he's fine. I don't think they really let him. He didn't give anything away. You know what I'm saying? They let him do just whatever he was meant to do. Off we go again. Down the road, down the thing, back. I mean, I'm kind of almost lost track of my reconnaissance on this, but we ended up way far back and down in the backside of NORAD, more west than what any of the diagrams, and about probably 20 to 25 levels down than what anybody talks about. Then we started to walk. I was getting a little melancholy. I was like, what is going on here? Why am I here? What's happening with all of this? I mean, I'm so struck for the forest and the trees. I have no idea what's happening. And so we're walking along, and the smells, it hit me first, because I do not like hospitals. I don't know. Going into hospitals for me. I don't know if you all have ever seen The Medium, the movie, the show, The Medium, with Patricia Arquette. She's a medium, and she, and the story is about Alison Dubois, a true real life medium that worked with the Phoenix Police Department for many years. And she has a scene where she's walking into a hospital, and it's like, your own personal Jesus. And she's got her headphones in, and she's trying to keep them all out. And she's like this, and they're just coming. She's walking down the thing, and she's just like, I mean, that's my experience in hospitals. It's horrific. I do not like going into hospitals or emergency rooms. It's even worse. They're like hanging out. They're stuck. They're like confused, and they're like, no. So we start to walk into something that smells like a hospital. My head snaps up like, oh God, what did you get me into? And we keep going in. And finally they bring me into a room. It's a small, average sized room. And they walked up to a smaller window, and the guy hits a button, and a thing goes back. We can see what's inside this room. So I look inside of this room, and inside of this room, it looks like a smaller medical room. The only gurney that was in there was a gurney that was right in front of the glass, as if it had been moved right there for me, right?
Right.
And on that gurney is a 6 foot tall Zeta. I didn't know who or what to even call him at this point. 6 feet tall on this thing with a cover over the top, like it was like a glass, plexiglass, something, maybe just to preserve it or something like that. We walk up to that, and I'm by now like, come on, really? I mean, I really thought they were trying to pull the wool over my eyes or maybe convince me of something. And I'm not really sure what the hell still is going on. So I'm like, I roll my eyes and I'm like, really? Am I supposed to believe that this is real? I mean, that's our natural reaction. Come on. I mean, even when we're faced with these beings, like in the physical for the very first time, your mind plays all different kinds of tricks and goes through all different kinds of contortions to not accept what you're looking at.
Right.
So I'm looking and I'm like, all right, I'm going to see if this is real or not. And I did the one thing I shouldn't have done, but I psychically went into this mind. Okay. Oh, man. The horrific stuff the military did to this being, they will be held accountable for one day. And I snapped back out. I started shaking. I started shivering. They were torturing it for technology. They were torturing it for permission to have something. They were torturing it to get at something, and it wouldn't do it. It would absolutely not do it. And it died because of it in a horrible way. And
you felt this. I mean, you could feel that.
I feel it now. You know, it's, it's horrible. It makes me sick to my stomach. And so I snap back out of that, I pull my consciousness out, and I start shaking. I start crying. I'm like, oh God, they're going to kill me.
All right. Yeah. Because now at this point, you start to question whether or not you're going to survive this ordeal.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. Oh.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I mean, if they did that to him, why wouldn't they do that to me? What's going to keep them from doing that to me?
Right.
And so I started shaking, and I kind of went in shock, to be quite honest with you at this point. They got me. It pushed me over the edge. And so I was led to a nearby area where I go into a room, and you first walk in, there's a big long table, and I chose to go all the way down at the end of the table, turn and face the door with my back against the wall. It took me years to get over that one. And then they came and flanked me, those guys on either side, and I just sat there waiting what seemed like an eternity. And about 45 minutes later, per my accounting, could have been longer, could have been shorter, it seemed like a long time, a man walked in the room, and he sat down at the other side of the table, and he sat down and he crossed his legs and looked at me for a long time, and he had on overalls, zip-ups, military, what I would refer to aviation type, like a pilot would put on to go fly something, with rank insignia removed. And also the other thing that was crazy about this, and then I found out later, was it was the color of Navy, not the Air Force. It wasn't blue. It was the Navy color. Okay, which confused me. And I said, since when do the Navy have aeronautical flight suits? And I had no idea. This is before secret space program and everything like that started to come out, and different things around that. So this man sat down and he looked at me long and hard, and he just kind of half smiled and said, now that you know, stop digging. Because I'm literally sitting on the edge of my chair waiting for this gentleman, a guy, to tell me, who reeked of high-ranking official. The guy had to have been very high in ranking. And just the way he held himself, a little bit older, a little bit like it. He came at, it's more like he wafted of experience than he showed age. Does that
Sure.
Like an old presence, but not without the age showing part?
Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Elizabeth, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So I, what? Now that I know stuff, know what? I don't know anything. I'm scared to death. I think you guys are going to kill me. I think you've brought me here to kill me. You know, and then he doesn't even interact with that. He just starts to name my adopted parents and their addresses. And my adopted mom and dad had gotten a divorce, and they knew where they lived. And they had just been reunited with my biological mom, my grandmother, and he named her and where she lived currently. And I just looked at him like,
yeah.
And then they go, you know how they go about talking, but they're not saying exactly what they're saying, but they're talking around something. So it's like useless conversation, right? I can't even go about it because I'm not designed that way. Instead of just coming right out like, if you say anything, you're going to die. I never said that. They didn't come out and say, if you say anything, everybody that you love will die, but they insinuated it very heavily.
Yeah, threat.
Right.
Total threat.
Yeah. And so at some point when he was talking, I blanked out again. Just went completely out. And it's like he got this melodical kind of tone too. And he started to speak and he started to say things, and I'm still dissecting because there's chemical, there's the way that they chemically go in with chemicals and with empaths, like that one I was talking to you about, to take memories out of people's minds or to suppress them. And so it's brainwashing by multiple different kinds of ways. So basically I had been brainwashed. I'd been memories taken away and stuff like that, because the next thing I knew, I woke up standing in the middle of that apartment that I no longer lived at 8:00 at night.
Oh my God.
I went there at like 12:30. Okay.
That's incredible.
So I later on discovered, through continuing to unlock these memories, continuing to get my brain stronger and be able to continually access different kinds of timelines. I had a recall, and it was specifically set in there for a time to come on. And in 2012, the memory came on. I was literally sitting there working with a shaman friend of mine, and we were doing inner child work. And all of a sudden I was back in NORAD. I'm sitting in that chair, a very physical feeling of it, a very surreal feeling of it. And that man that I had been for the next 10 years or something like that was terrified. And the picture that I held in my mind, even at a subconscious level, was run. I'm not safe. Run, you're not safe. Run, you're not safe. Run, you're not safe. And I did. I went as a carpenter, contractor, just starting out as a carpenter, really. That's what I fell back onto after I got out of the military. Was I'd show up in a town, wherever I was drawn to, and it would be all over the United States at any moment. And I'd sit in a coffee shop and I'd sit and talk to people. And when they'd ask me what I did, I told them I did carpentry and remodeling. And I would get a job, and then I would be able to sustain by word of mouth because of the integrity I bring to my work. And I would do that everywhere I went. And so in 2002, when I started doing landmark education and started unlocking and undoing we started doing different brain work. I could unlock other things that they had locked down. So in 2012, with my friend, I'm sitting there, and she saw me go through this whole thing, and I watched her watch me, like from an outside point of view, like remotely. And we're sitting in this exercise, and then I just completely blank out, and I'm there. I'm completely in that room again, that room that terrified me for 20 years. What is going on? Why am I back here again? And then that same man leans forward just enough to get you in there. Leans forward just enough to be in my peripheral, but he doesn't come forward, he's not back. He's in my peripheral, and he's got his hand on my right shoulder, and he's in my peripheral, and he leans in really close as if to avoid any kind of cameras. And he says, "You are not safe. I'm your father. I will try to keep you as safe as I can for as long as I can, but you need to run." So I did, like 10 years.
Unbelievable. And every time you tell this story, I know.
Wait, I'm confused. Who's the father? I'm confused. Who's the father?
So let me go back a little bit further, because let me go back to when Mom was pregnant with me. Mm-hmm. She was in Orlando, okay, near McCoy Air Force Base, the place of fuckery. There was so much stuff going on at this Air Force base with regard to extraterrestrials and like experimental type stuff, right? It's McCoy Air Force Base out of Orlando, Florida.
I think that's one of my points.
Live, like right here. I live right down the street.
You live right down the street. You live right down the street.
We moved even closer from when you were here.
Oh my goodness!
And I had to do historical research on McCoy just for Orange County. I was writing some articles about historic, whatever. And now
Orlando is one of my points. My Galactic.
Oh my gosh!
Nice. Orlando. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I found that. Well, now it's Orlando International is huge, but McCoy, I couldn't find. I would love to do now that I know this, because I was doing it just from a regular historical standpoint when it started, what it was used for. But that was a big deal. McCoy in the day was a big deal, like what 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
70s, yep.
70s.
If you go, I think they started to really wrap down some of the projects about 77, 78 out of McCoy.
Okay.
But if you go talk to the locals, you're going to need to find some older people now that have been in the area, haven't left the area. I would even go to nursing homes and talk to the locals, because they'll all tell you about the lights that would come in and out, the UFOs that would fly in and out of that lake. Then it became so big and so much concentration around Orlando and stuff like that, they couldn't do it anymore. But I think they connected it via tunnel underground out to the ocean. But anyway, McCoy Air Force Base, definitely. So McCoy Air Force Base, my mom lives in Orlando. She's 16 years old, or just turned 16 years old. And she was hanging out at the ranch. It was a restaurant right across the way from where you come and go from McCoy Air Force Base. I have no idea if that restaurant is still there. It's just very close to. Okay, yeah. Very close to there. Well, all the officers and stuff like that would go hang out. A lot of the people would go eat there, hang out there. My mom was there with some friends of hers. And there was a man that approached her that was a lieutenant at the time. No, captain. Let me access it, not through my memory, but through timeline. Hang on a second. He was lieutenant at the time. He was an officer, and mom was just taken by him. Really, like, tall, 6'3". She's 6'1". He was taller than her. Really dark hair, and eyes that she said would turn from blue to green to gray and back to green to blue, and stuff like that constantly when she would look into him. Not like, she said, like weird, like mesmerizing, hypnotic type of a thing, right? And she said he walked right up to her and asked her out. So he would have, I guess if he was Earth-based, would have been somewhere in his 20s, what he looked like, but he could have been much older than that, because I don't think he's fully human. And the sense that I get and the research I keep doing is that he was attached to McCoy Air Force Base as a liaison and was put into the Air Force, but could very well either be a hybrid or somebody that they worked to put on planet from off planet in some sort of, agreement with the military, with the Air Force.
Right.
And she said that he told her that he experimented with dogs. His job was experimentation with dogs. And I'm like, you didn't ask him any more about that? She said, no. It's like he would control like what they would talk about and what they would do whenever they would be together. And he basically wooed her. They spent a lot of time in his place just off base with his, civilian roommate, different rooms, obviously. But she became pregnant. They spent a lot of time together. He wooed her. They had a lot of sex. They listened to a lot of music, and she got pregnant. Then it's like the moment she found out she was pregnant, she went to the house. Like it was like a couple months. She must have been 15 because she had me 3 days before her 17th birthday. Because it seemed like that they dated at least for a month or two. It was a short period of time, but long enough to have her feel as though he wanted to be in a relationship with her. And so when she became pregnant, she went to that guy's house and knocked on the door, like all excited, you know, and the civilian came to the door, and she's like, he's not here. JJ is what she called him. I was like, Mom, what's his last name? I don't remember. Mom, what's his last name? Over the years, I don't remember. JJ,
oh my
Mom?
gosh.
JJ, that's it? That's all you remember? Yes, I remember what the way he looks like. I remember his first name is JJ. It could have been short for something. We have gone around and around and around. They locked it out of her memory. And so I come from the particular line that my mother was her mother is Irish and her father is full-blooded Cherokee, both full-blooded Irish, full-blooded Cherokee. And so I'd heard during this time, I've heard during my research and coming across other hybrid mothers that the different kinds of hybridization things that were going on the planet, and women being specifically sought out for bloodline and DNA. Mm-hmm. So something about that Cherokee Irish thing is I keep hearing over and over and over again. So
they say that Cherokee came from the Pleiades. There's a saying.
Yes. Yeah. From the stars we come, to the stars we shall return. The Pleiades saying, yes. And one day I'd love to go into and possibly have a completely different show on the true galactic history of all the different species and stuff like that. What would be fun to have me and Laura on at the same time talking about that, Laura Eisenhower. We both do galactic history.
I've always wanted to meet her, and then I was all set to meet her at Contact in the Desert, and then she was supposed to be there, but then never showed up. And I was all ready to introduce myself because I'd say I get good vibes from seeing her do other things, but I've never met her.
This year, and, Contact in the Desert?
It was the one, well, not the one that was just canceled. The one that I met you, Krista. When was that?
That was the UFO Congress.
Oh, sorry.
In Phoenix last year.
Gotcha. Last year?
No, wait. It was definitely Contact in the Desert. She was supposed to be there. And it was the last one.
She usually speaks. Yeah,
she usually speaks, but she was not there. So anyway, I always wanted to meet her. So that would be great if you can get her to come on. We could do something really cool.
Pick a date, let me know it, and I'll go to her and get her on there to do this the true galactic history.
So just to clarify, so now your mom, and JJ, so he's your father.
He's my father. So she went to go see him. Showed up at the house. He wasn't there. She's panics. Like, what do you mean he's not here? He's like, dude, I don't know. He said it was top secret. I can't ask. So she went to the base, and they wouldn't let her onto the base, but she remembered the name of another guy that he was with. They called him down since he wasn't there, because she obviously remembered his name at the time, but she couldn't get on the base without him. He came to the gate and looked a little bit startled that she had remembered his name. It's like, what? And he's like, she's like, where's JJ? And he's like, he's been reassigned. I can't tell you where. You can't tell me where. I'm pregnant with his child. He's like, sorry, ma'am, I can't tell you anything. And walked away. And I've not had an open contact. I've had a lot of what would be considered maybe telepathic type of communications, urgings, protections at certain points, certain things in my life, things happened that were men in black were there. Like I've had men in black in my life throughout my life, my entire life. In fact, it was the men in black that took me away from the abusive situation I was in and put me in the foster care system.
Yeah, they seem to have something to do with timelines.
Yep, timelines. Exactly.
Yeah. To make sure certain events happen. Well, it looks like.
I'm sorry. No, so fast forward. You think was the guy in NORAD who spoke to you at the end, the very distinguished, high-ranking gentleman in the jumpsuit? Do you think he was your dad?
Yeah, because I started to get through. Because even when I first started recounting that story, I had in my mind like a 50, 55, speckled hair, kind of gray, high and tied type of gentleman. But when he leaned forward and told me he was my father, he had black hair and blue-green eyes. Black, like he didn't show any age at all. Yeah. Like he looked like we could have almost been the same age at that point. So, yeah. And then there were some other situations that happened, being physically attacked, trying to have my astral body captured in the middle of the day one time. And the men in black started coming by. And at one point I had my girlfriend roll down the window and I said, tell my father I'm fine. I'm good. and then the Men in Black stopped driving by.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's...
They know him. Sounds like they know who he is.
Yeah.
And he's somewhere high clearance, very high clearance.
Beyond what clearance is. It's they completely operate on their own thing.
I know.
Well,
there's so much to talk about, but we're out of time. But here, there's like 3 or 4 more things I wanted to get to, but
Sure.
why don't we have you come back on?
Okay.
And then we can talk about that.
We can dive down the tunnel like a rabbit hole that goes so far. I mean, on things, not only just my life and certain things that have happened in my life, but just topics, like
right.
What's going on right now? How do we deal with this? Are the Galactics coming or are they not coming? What's the place and the stance that they have in this with a current world affair and so on and so forth. And so it's like that stuff happened to me. I have these experiences. I have these jobs. I have these agreements. I have these soul contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And now I tell people about my soul contracts. I help them with theirs. I try to help educate people and wake them up. I'm a warrior. I'm an activist. There's so many different things. So I'd be happy to come on anytime.
It feels like you can even activate memories of people's galactic timelines.
Yes.
That's what I'm feeling.
Yes.
Yeah, like
there's a lot there.
Yeah, I'm watching Krista's reactions because I love watching because Krista's so sensitive.
The journalist look.
I know. I'm like, okay, I'm just right. I'm the journalist, and then Krista, I know, is getting these emotional hits. I know when you get emotionally hit, and you're getting emotionally hit a lot during this one. So, but
don't tell everybody.
I don't have to tell anyone. You can see it.
Spot.
You were just like, whoa, you sit back, but it's all good. It's all I could tell, but it's all a good thing. I mean, we're gonna close out here, but Sierra, I'm always amazed. And there's so much more I learn every time I speak with you. But let's next time go from there. We'll start to get into more of now, like the fact that it seems like your whole life has been a conglomeration of ET human contact, and I mean, you are just all in the middle of all of it.
Yeah.
From super soldiers to hybridization, not only to your pregnancy, to hybrid children. Who knows how many hybrid children you may have, but the fact that your dad may have been, you're hybrid. I mean, let's just say it. I mean, there's no question, and it's just there's so much, and yes.
That
was the whole point of the show right there. Yes, we are on the show with a hybrid. Awesome. So let's plan on that, and then we can also plan with Laura. That would be great to have Laura Eisenhower on, so we can plan that as well.
Perfect.
Oh, no need for the music unless you really like to hear the outro. Let's play the outro music. It's just so good.
Thanks again so much. It's been a joy to be here with the both of you. I look forward to being on again.
Sierra, thank you. Thank you so much for being on.
Okay, we'll see you all next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.